Zach, you're up next.
Hey Bart.
How's it going? You know what depolarization means?
Kind of lost on that right
All
now.
right, well, we'll explain it. All right, so
Okay.
where's this played out of?
This is in Hard Rock, Hollywood in South Florida.
All right, are they doing some sort of tournament there? My buddy Josh from Boston, the firefighter, he's there right now. They're doing a tournament
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I think it's the Lucky Hearts Open. It's called.
Seminole Hard Rock, right? Seminole Hard Rock,
Yes.
and this is in Fort Lauderdale or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And what's the size of the game?
This is a 5-5-10 game.
Hmm.
$2,500 cap. This is kind of like a semi-private game that they opened up to later as like some of the players left. It's not a normal stake that they play there.
Hmm.
They kind of let players that want to play like those semi-private games choose, the structures and the
Hmm.
stuff like that. So there's 7 players in the hand, and I'm the effective stack at about 4,200.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And the main villain has at least a 10K stack.
Okay. This is a big game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty big, pretty
Yeah.
big. I'm normally like a 2-5 player, so this is definitely a big game for me.
What are you up or did you buy in for this amount?
No, so I bought in for the max at 25,
Oh,
so
okay.
I ran it up a little bit to 42.
Okay.
And the main villain is just a whale.
Okay.
I've actually played with him at 2-5 before, so I already knew who he
And he's great
was.
that he's sitting with 10,000, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so he's playing about 70-80% VPIP, I would say,
Okay.
at least. He's pretty aggro. He definitely has a lot of bluffs in different situations. So
Okay.
good guy to play against, but it can be a little tricky sometimes.
Okay.
Should we go to
Yeah.
pre-flop?
Yeah. Go for pre-flop. Yep.
Okay, sure. So this hand, there's a $25 button straddle. The villain is in the small blind, and I'm in the cutoff with black tens.
So does the villain act first?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. So he limps for 25.
Okay.
The hijack limps for 25.
Okay.
And I'm in the cutoff, like I said, with black tens, and I raise to 125.
So 10 of spades, 10 of clubs to 125. A little bit on the smaller side. I might have gone just a touch larger with these stack sizes in position.
Yeah, especially, yeah. Also, the button is obviously in for that
Right.
straddle. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. I might have gone went one, maybe 150, 175, something like that. But okay, so you go to 125.
Yeah, and probably even more so with this villain. He's calling any open,
Well, there. I
really.
mean, then yeah, even more of a reason to make it like 200. Then
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
So the button folds, the
Uh-huh.
villain calls, of course, and the hijack also calls.
All right. So the small blind calls and the hijack calls.
Yep.
So you're away 125 times three. It's probably somewhere around 400, right? Ish.
Yeah, just under 400.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. So the flop comes. It's the 10 of hearts.
That's a good flop right away if you're going high to low.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in the window too, so I was
Okay.
super excited. Then the 9 of spades and the 7 of
Nine
clubs.
of spades, seven of clubs. Brad, my editor, you make sure to hold that 10 of hearts when we talk about that. So 10, 9, 7. Okay. So you flop top set. Okay.
Yep.
Uh huh.
So it checks to me.
Hmm.
And I bet 325.
I mean, obviously there's a straight out there. I mean, there's,
Yep.
Jack 8 and 6 8. You go 325.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and I remember you posting this up in the CLP forums, right, in Discord. And I contacted you because I want this is my. Well, of course, the forums are relatively new. Discord sort of introduced this new feature where there are actual forums, kind of like old school, where people can post, and it works great for poker. You can post, a hand, and it stays on there forever, as opposed to it just going away. I think they did that like 6 months ago or something like that. And I saw you post this hand, and I went to you and I was like, "Can you call this one in?" Might be my first time that I've actually done that, because when I saw your sizing on the flop, I was like, "Oh, I like that sizing here," because even though you block like obviously like the top, and it's exploitable sizing too, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? You're never gonna, you're not really supposed to be doing that multi-way on a board like this when it's not going to necessarily hit you all that hard. But against these guys, you've got Jack X for gut shots, Jack plus pairs, any type of pair plus an 8 is a straight draw. It seems like, and then like King Queen, King Jack is a double gutter, right? Queen Jack, King Jack. What did I say? Yeah, I already said King Jack. King Queen's a gut shot. I just like the sizing for those reasons. I don't think you're going to get like. It's just a good sizing, I think, on the flop before some scare cards come out.
Yeah, and honestly, aside from a lot of those different draws, he's really calling here with like any piece of the flop, any pair. If he has two Broadway cards, he's calling
Right,
me. Like
right.
he's super loose. He's had a few beers. He's having fun. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I bet 325. He calls and the hijack folds.
Right. All right. So small blind calls next to act, and the hijack folds. So we put in 650. It's like 1,050 moving to the
Yep.
turn.
Yeah. The turn is the deuce of spades, so almost a brick, but brings in backdoor spades.
And you've got black 10, so there's no 10x of spades available, but there's 7x of spades, there's 8x of spades, and there's jack x of spades all available, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like if the guy somehow was like limping in, I don't know how wide he limps. I mean, he'd have to be pretty far out there. But Jack X, which is probably Jack plus a pair or Jack plus a gut shot, at least a gut shot on the flop would turn backdoor spade. So you kind of have to be aware of those things. Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely in his range. He's playing almost any two pre. So on the turn, the villain checks to me, and I bet 700.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. I would still continue with that sort of on the larger side for sure. You know what I mean?
And he calls.
Okay. Now, this is a situation here where even before, it's kind of interesting that we've gotten this whole sort of clumps of hands like this. I don't know if you heard earlier on, but I mean, maybe against this villain, it's slightly different because maybe he's just calling that, like maybe you can get 3 streets against a 9, but there are certain situations here where even on like what looks like a brick, it might be best to check it back at the end, just when you start to think about what he's calling with, if it's all draws, right? I mean, it's probably going to be, close, but again, maybe against this guy, it's a little bit different. Okay, so let's move to the river.
Yeah, so the river is the 6 of diamonds.
All right, so the river's a 6 of diamonds, so it brings in, obviously the open-ended straight, right?
Yep. And the 8 is a straight.
Yep. Okay.
So he checks.
This is where we get. I knew that depolarization thing was going to come in here somewhere. So small blind checks. All right. So let's take a look at this here. So I think maybe a lot of people maybe in the live chat here too. Their gut reaction is, well, I mean, Bart, you just said, Bart, like you're going to be checking back like a lot of rivers here because, the guy's going to have a draw, right? And that is true. However, I find it kind of interesting here that the river is a 6 in the fact that is it possible that this 6 brought in maybe some 2 pair? I think I'd rather have the river be, I'm trying to think, would I rather have the river be an 8 or there's more 2 pair? But if the river's an 8, then you've got up and down straights available, right? Here, the only straight is an 8. Like if the river was an 8, anyone with a jack or a 6 would have a straight. So with the river being a 6, obviously anyone with an 8 has a straight here. But again, I do think that just the sheer fact that he's checked the river here again has to cut down on the fact that he's got 8x. I mean, maybe not always, but a good chunk of it, because people are going to be checking back in your spot so often, right?
Yeah, I agree. I kind of discounted that he had an 8 because of the check. Just the type of player he was, I felt like he's not going to want to miss value. He also has done some strange bluffs in previous hands where he donk bet like the pot on the river, and when we saw a scare card, not against me but against other players, and so. Did
he have it when he did that though?
Yeah, sometimes he had it and sometimes it was a bluff. So
right.
accidentally balancing in those situations. I feel
yeah. This is an interesting one because I just kind of want to bet here for those reasons. Of course, on the podcast a few weeks ago, the worst call in the history of my career. I mean, it wasn't quite like this, but I bet aces at the end and then forgot to bet fold when a backdoor flush came in because I didn't think that the guy would ever have a front door flush came in actually by not leading the river. So I mean, if you think that if he's very, very call happy here, I could certainly see a bet here. And the reason why the depolarization comes into play, what that means is that when you're in a situation where your opponent thinks that the only thing that you'd be betting on the river is what they deem to be a strong hand, like an 8 plus, the fact that you're betting for value with something other than that, you will find that you'll actually get called down more, because if they were to sort of transpose themselves in your position, they would only bet with a straight. So the fact that you're betting means that they think you either have an 8 or you're bluffing, and you will actually get called down sometimes lighter. And great examples of this is like sort of like low one-liners that come when you've got an overpair and a single raise pot heads up against maybe like a limp caller who obviously flops like top pair, like on, king 6 deuce, turns a 4, like totally offsuit, and then the river is like a 3, and you have aces, and it's pretty obvious the guy's got like king queen or king jack. I mean, you can take those guys to value town and they'll call you because they'll just always think that you're betting just as straight. And you're actually depolarizing. So this is kind of a little bit of example for that. So what did you do here?
Well, the pot was about 2,400 on the river here.
Yeah.
I was kind of frozen, to be honest. Every option was kind of going through my head in terms of like bet small, bet big. I could shove here. I'm not sure that's necessarily the right play.
I don't know. I mean,
but
that's interesting. I mean, shoving's interesting. We're going to talk about that tomorrow too, about how sometimes you can size these depolarization type things, because in the prep work that we did for the podcast tomorrow, Nate gave me some examples of sizing up and getting the same sort of frequencies of calls that you would. I just think that there's too much out there, though. Like I don't know if someone's going to hero call you with like ace 7 of spades here if you jam. You know what I mean? It's just, I mean, you have like, how much do you have left here? I mean,
I have about 3K, so it would be an overbet shove.
I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting one. I definitely do think a bet is in order here, though. And again, this is one kind of similar to last time where it's like, whoa, do you bet? And I think this was my initial reaction when I read your post. I think I like a bet to induce here. I honestly do. I actually think I bet. I think your opponent might end up different from last hand with a fair amount of hands that he might have some low pairs, but they're probably not good. And he might just sort of spaz out and take it for a bluff. So, I mean, if you were to go like 500, I think maybe I go 500 call. I mean, usually I'm not like a proponent of, necessarily like bet calling off when people show a lot of strength. But I mean, from the backstory with this guy, it would seem like he's capable, and you might induce it.
Yeah. What about if I bet like half pot and he shoved? Would it have to be a call there?
Well, if you bet half pot and he shoved, the pot would be like, what, 48 and 18 for you to call? I think it's you probably have enough behind where he still might deem that there's fold equity here. Mm-hmm. Anytime a guy's clicking buttons, it's going to be hard pressed for me to really sort of find the fold button. What ended up happening? What'd you do?
So I was just frozen, and I was kind of deciding between sort of a medium-sized bet, like I said, half pot, or just checking behind. And I decided to check behind, which I don't think was the right decision based on all the reasons you just mentioned. But the villain laughed and he showed his cards. He had 7-8 offsuit, so he did make a straight, and he told me like he was going to get it all if.
Well, I mean, if I put that bet in for 500, he probably would have got it all. That's why I kind of go back to what I said. Like, I wonder if I would prefer the river be an 8 instead of a 6, because even though there's more combinations of straights, I think there becomes more combinations of sort of two pairy types of hands where the 6 isn't really all that connected when you really take a look at it. Like, unless he's got 7-6 of spades, something like that. But yeah, I mean, you can be results oriented with a bad call. You can be results oriented with I don't think it's a terrible check. I think it's probably pretty close.
Yeah, that's why I posted the hand, because I thought it wasn't a great check. I think I'm losing a lot of value on his range. So
would you have bet folded then?
I don't think I could have folded, no, because
Yeah.
he has enough bluffs. He could even he could even be shoving with worse there. Like maybe he rivered set of sixes. That's another thing I was
Wow.
thinking
Well,
of.
that's just insane. Zach,
Yeah.
I got to move along. I appreciate the
Yep.
call. Thank you very much.